Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today at this sacred temple on the planet StreamYard to open our hearts and once again fall in love with the galaxy far, far away. To reach out and welcome the cosmic energies of the universe into our bodies, flowing through us and binding us together. To embrace the ways of the light side by working together and being at peace with all living things. To listen to the will of the Force rather than trying to manipulate and corrupt the Force to our wills, for that is the way of the dark side. And also bad faith actors on the internet. So let us all gather around the meditation circle. Take a deep breath and welcome positive energies into this room of fanboy conversation and thematic discussion as we begin our podcasting journeys into Reconnecting with the Force. How was that for an intro, guys?
It was a hell of an intro.
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
I don't know what I expected. It wasn't that, and I'm so glad it was that.
Right?
I'm so glad that worked. I'm so glad. Oh, you know what? I forgot one thing. This is the podcast. That's the thumbnail. I wanted to end with a show and like, here's what the logo is for this official podcast, and I forgot to click the button. But okay. Either way, audibly, it was still badass. So
it was very great.
Oh yeah.
Let's get into the official introductions, ladies and gentlemen, gays, theys, children of the Force, species of all ages. My name is, well, I go by many names. Sometimes Nico Regoli, sometimes Nico Suave Regoli, sometimes Nicholas Starheart on Twitch. And in terms of the world of professional wrestling, Nico Furioso. And I am your host of this podcast. Basically to lay it out, this podcast is, we are going to be watching, and by we, I mean me and several of my other friends, these two gentlemen included here on the screen with me. We are going to be watching everything Star Wars in chronological order, canonically, according to Wikipedia. So no legend stuff. We might get to that sometime way, way, way in the future if this podcast still exists. But for now, we're just like, we're going through everything in order to try and get like a new perspective on Star Wars, try and understand the themes a little bit better, try and create a healthier conversation of everything. And I'm joined today by two great gentlemen to hopefully have some healthy conversations with. Firstly, the man below me on the screen, but not in life. He and I have hosted a show together before called Crisis on Earthplex. I don't know if any of you have heard of it because it didn't really get that much viewership. It is what it is. But we basically discussed the Arrowverse well all the way into Crisis on Infinite Earths, that special on the CW. Ladies and gentlemen, the Z-Man, Zadius Smith.
Yo. Thank you for having me back, good sir. What's going on, good people? I'm looking forward to this a lot. Like you said, I think this is our first podcast together since Crisis on Earthplex. So this is going to be fun. It's another little avenue that we both love, too.
I think we tried to do like a Stargirl review show on my own channel.
Yeah.
And we got through like 2 episodes of the podcast, not of the show. The show is great, and I'm sad that it's ending next week. But in terms of the podcast that we were doing to discuss the show, it did not last very long. I got sidetracked. I wasn't in a position at the time to really run a show like that. And like just it wasn't working out. It is what it is. But we're going to make this show work. I promise you that.
We have a lot of material to make this show work too. So much. At that point in time, it was only Stargirl, but it wasn't a lot of things to really go off into. So,
absolutely. How you doing, Richard Hero? That is my good friend JB3. Hanging out in the chat on Twitch. We are broadcasting on Twitch, YouTube, and also Twitter. So if you're on Twitch or YouTube and you're watching the show, please let us know that you're alive in the comments section in the chat. Please do so. We are also joined by my cousin. He has a band. It performs. It's
what
called
an intro.
It's called the Book Club. Go
check us out at your local library.
Yes, go check him out whenever he's around the Pennsylvania or Ohio areas.
We got not a shameless plug here, but we got a show in Greensburg coming up December 9th. So
be sure to include that plug again at the end of the show because I've got a ton of wrestling plugs as well for the end of the show.
Yeah, shameless. I will include it many more.
But anyway, once again, my cousin, Sean Slyban.
All right. I'm stoked to be here. It's been a minute since I've really taken a dive into Star Wars. So I'm personally very excited to, even if I'm not on every episode, to at least follow along and keep up with everything. Making my podcast debut here tonight. Had a couple of failed attempts before this first time actually on air. So I'm stoked.
What do you mean failed attempts?
Well, not to get into a long story. First time I was doing it with me and a buddy. I recorded my audio. We were doing it over Zoom. He forgot to record his. So the entire podcast is just me. And you can faintly hear him in the background through my headphones.
So this is why I'm very glad we're doing this through StreamYard because it is dummy proof. It is dummy proof. And I can be a technological dummy sometimes. So I'm very glad to just have this keeping us afloat. But so those are our introductions. Now I would like to get into let's all talk about where we are in our Star Wars journeys, how those Star Wars journeys began, and where we are now. And I'll start with me because this is my show and I can do that. So my Star Wars journey had a very interesting beginning. I was a regular member of like the Lego Club, so I always got like catalogs and magazines every 2 months or so. And so I saw a lot of Star Wars sets, and I was that guy who just thought it was cool to hate Star Wars because it was the cool thing. And so I was that dickhead. I own up to it. I admit it. And I'm a dumbass for feeling that way. SY is legit. StreamYard is legit. Thank you very much, Richard Hero. Thank you. So my actual true introduction to Star Wars was I had walked in on my dad watching Attack of the Clones shortly after it came out on video release. And I think I came in like not midway through, but early midway through. It was sometime after Obi-Wan had just chased Jango Fett off Camino. And so I'm a young kid at this time. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. We get to the droid factory scene, and C-3PO got decapitated and had his head replaced with a battle droid and vice versa. And I'm like, what is this? What am I watching? I'm like horrified from that. Then Padme Amidala gets clawed in the back. Then Jango Fett gets decapitated. Then Anakin loses an arm at the end, and I'm just like, I don't know if this is for me. I'm horrified. Like, this is my first encounter with dismemberment, and I'm just like not comfortable with it at all. And so I'm questioning whether or not Star Wars is for me. And then for some reason I went back, gave it another chance, and then started marathoning all 6 movies like every weekend, and it became a passion of mine. Specifically lightsabers and lightsaber construction. I was a big fan of those. I would draw lightsabers on paper, try and make them out of cardboard tubes, just like trying to design new variations of lightsabers. I'm still waiting for a hook sword variation. Thank you very much, whenever that may come. And then the Clone Wars came in, and I literally grew up with Ahsoka Tano. So she is a character I can relate to very much, and thankfully we're discussing something that she's in as part of this first episode. And so it was a unique experience having a character I could literally grow up with in Star Wars. And I continued to follow along these characters' journeys in other mediums, be it Rebels, be it Resistance, a couple video games here and there. Some novels, even the ones I was able to get through. Dark Disciple is a great novel. That's also canon. Please check it out if you haven't gotten a chance to. And the sequel trilogy came out, and I'm not using this tone of voice to say like, oh, the sequel trilogy is bad, because listen, there's a lot of things to love and hate about Star Wars, and it's just a matter of how you want to shape your point of view. The thing is, I got when the sequel trilogy came out, I had also started getting involved with like online movie discussions and started following a lot of those channels. And so hearing the way pundits were talking about certain things kind of shaped the way my perspective was and how I started talking about those things. It's actually how I met Zadius. And you know, he was one of those guys that had healthy opinions. There were also a lot of guys who had a lot of dumbass opinions that were just trying to get internet clout. And I kind of like let those guys shape my perspective a little bit. And when I stopped doing that, I was just so turned off by it that I didn't really want to be part of the fandom anymore. And it got to a point where I was just like, I don't like where the discussion is going anymore. I kind of want to start a podcast to see if we can change the way we discuss things, because at the end of the day, this is content that's supposed to like have life lessons that change that and those lessons are supposed to sort of guide us in the direction of being better people. Same goes for superhero movies, but we're talking about Star Wars for this. And like, it seems that a lot of the people who claim to love these things don't get the memo when it comes to those messages and those themes, and they become the villain in a sense. That they completely it goes over their head that like these are movies about Nazis in a way, and fighting oppression and things of that nature. Like they're just like, oh, this was written horribly, and like Mary sues and blah blah blah, and it's like you're missing the point. You're missing the point, and so that's what I hope this show will do. Is we are going to tackle more of the themes. We are going to talk about characters we like, but and places we like and things we liked, and like, ooh, that scene was cool and that scene was cool. But at the end of the day, we want to get down to the nitty gritty, the themes, and all that, and try and make us all better as a result of having discussed those. Now, that was a very long ramble. Zadius, how did your Star Wars journey start, and where is it at right now?
It started. I can't exactly tell you the year, but I remember seeing. Again, can't tell you the year, but I remember seeing the very first Star Wars. I'm not that old. This was sometime in the '90s. Let me clarify. Let me start off with that. It was in the '90s. I can't remember where I was, but I remember seeing the first Star Wars. Well, at that time, Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. At that, I mean not Return of the Jedi, A New Hope, and I just felt. I thought seeing it was cool seeing space battles, but then it was just the fact that also I saw laser swords is what I described them when I was younger. Now I know better, so I know of course they're lightsabers, but I started liking the series a lot more. I remember actually seeing the first three because back when we had VHS, those are these big old cassette tapes, people, that you used to place in something called a VCR to watch a movie. I know, but watching the first well, at that time the first three movies, I liked them a lot, and whenever episode 1 came out, I was very ready to go see that. And then I liked episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and mainly Revenge of the Sith is still one of my favorites because I knew this was the turn, and still one of my favorite movies of the Star Wars canon. And kind of like you, as time went on, I heard a lot more of the negativity about especially at that time the prequel trilogy, and I kind of let it like sway my mind on some of the movies. However, the ones I liked, again, episode 3, I just liked. I let everything else roll off my shoulders. But like with episode 2 and episode 1, I started finding the flaws, and while I still think there are some flaws in there in both those two movies, I love the fact that, unlike you, I didn't really grow up with Ahsoka Tano. I didn't watch the Clone Wars series until they got on Disney Plus a couple years back. But when they were on there, because I definitely had a lot of time on my hand, I literally binged all the Clone Wars episodes, and that series is great. And the best part about it is it makes episode 2 a lot better, and especially with these two of the episodes that we're gonna talk about here tonight, it also makes the episode 2 a lot better. Now that may be a fallacy on the episode, but it does make me on that movie, but it makes me care about that movie a lot more. So besides playing video games with Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic is still one of my favorite, and all the way to Fallen Order now. That's pretty much my Star Wars journey right now, and I pride myself in keeping up with delays in the Star Wars. However, I don't watch everything like when it comes to the animated side, but when it comes to live action, I've pretty much seen everything.
Thank you, thank you. One question: is there any way you can lower your camera a little bit because
Oh
your
yeah,
face is being like cut in half by
there
the
we
lower
go.
third? There we go. There's that beautiful face.
So it was just a talking head, pretty much like Wilson
Yeah,
from Home Improvement.
yes, it was very much like Wilson from Home Improvement. But it's okay. We fixed it. We fixed it. My cousin Sean, can you please tell us your Star Wars journey, how it began, and where you are right now?
Oh God. This entire time I've been trying to think of where did my Star Wars journey begin? And honestly, I think I've been watching episodes 4, 5, and 6 since like as long as I can remember. Like I grew up with watching A New Hope like constantly. And I don't think it helped that I was addicted to Lego Star Wars 2 as well. Like I played that game religiously for probably 2 to 3 years straight. Beat it probably 5 or 6 times. Like it was such a good game to me and defined such a large chunk of my childhood. Um, and moving forward, like the Clone Wars came out, then I got really into the prequels for a little bit, which at the time was a really odd thing to be really into. But I was a prequels apologist, and a little bit after that, the sequels came out, and what do you know? I became a sequels apologist too. I will die on the hill that The Last Jedi is one of the best Star Wars movies. It was done dirty in so many ways, but that's for a later episode. I won't get into that too much now. But then I love how they've just taken so many of these stories and made them so much more accessible lately. Like even with Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, Boba Fett, Bad Batch, they're just taking a deep dive into so many cool parts of the Star Wars universe. And I love the way that it has been taken. And so sadly, I've not been as involved with Star Wars as I would like to be in the last couple of years or so. But that's half the reason I'm here. I'm not, I don't want to say reigniting the passion because it never died down, but forcing myself to really take that look and get back in.
Well,
He's reconnecting, which makes
yes,
sense.
Bingo.
Exactly.
living up to the title, living up to
Mhm.
the title of Reconnecting with the Force in DVR. By the way, shout out to the original Lego Star Wars game. I would not be good at Star Wars trivia if not for having played that Lego Star Wars game
Honestly, same.
and learning all the names of these characters, of like random droid here, random droid there, and it's like seriously. For as a kid with ADHD, that game is a great way to learn things. That especially when it comes to character names, because then it's like, oh, I need to unlock this guy. I need to unlock this guy, and then you learn the name like that. It's gotten harder with the newer games because I've gotten older, so my brain is different, and also there are so many more characters in these games now. Like all there were 50 characters, I think, back in the original game. Now there's like upwards of 300
I
plus
was going to say there's a
DLC.
ton in the Skywalker saga.
A lot, and I still need to get back to that game. I haven't been able to Twitch stream in a while, but the exception of this, but game streaming, I mean.
Mhm.
Anyway, I'm still rambling again. So yes, that is our journeys in Star Wars thus far. As we go through the weeks in this podcast, and you see new panelists pop up here and there, you will. I will ask them on their first appearances. What is your Star Wars journey? How did it begin, and where you are now? Um, who shows up next week? We'll see. It will be these two gentlemen again? Will it be other people? And will we learn some new Star Wars journey information? Again, we'll see. But for now, we're in the present, and before we get into like the discussion of the shows that we watched in preparation for this podcast for this week, we do have a couple rules that we would like to discuss, and this is going to shape how this podcast plays out today and in future episodes moving forward. There are 8 rules, and they should be easy to follow. Starting off with rule 1: if there's a piece of Star Wars lore slash history that you dislike, think about another piece of Star Wars lore slash history out there, which you may love, that may justify that thing you dislike's existence. So basically, like, again, going back to some people have gripes about the sequel trilogy, some people have gripes about the prequel trilogy, but they might like something else where the same thing they dislike in one of those things happened, they like it in the other thing. So I'm just trying to put it in perspective of, again, we're trying to change the way people think about Star Wars, and just try to think, because one of the things George Lucas always said was about Star Wars specifically, it's like poetry, it rhymes. There's a lot of parallels in various aspects of Star Wars in various points of the lore. Hell, there were multiple Death Stars and Death Star-like objects. So history repeats itself a lot in this franchise. So it makes sense that like certain things would pop up more than once, and you might not. And so basically, like if it popped up in a way that you didn't like, think about the way it popped up that you did like, and hopefully that'll change your perspective about some things.
Okay.
Rule number two. There are people who have given their heart and soul to making Star Wars content. Whether or not you like their work, they are still incredibly passionate and creative people. Be considerate of their feelings when discussing their work, especially with regards to any actors who got bullied off of social media for a certain amount of time. Basically, don't be a dick.
Right.
Sorry, my throat's getting dry. But yeah, like this is something we all love, and we should not be yelled at for loving something. Like it hurts, man. Like that's the whole reason why the show exists, is like I got tired of seeing people get bullied on the internet, and I kind of want to see that change a little bit. Rule number 3. There are multiple ways to tell a story. There are multiple stories to be told, and they all have a place in Star Wars. Sean, I don't think you saw Andor yet, but I did tell you it feels different from a lot of other Star Wars stuff.
Actually, since Thanksgiving, I actually did watch a couple episodes of Andor.
Oh, cool.
I felt very motivated to start it, and yes, I completely agree. It is such a different story.
Like, I once won a debate pitching Aunt Z from Resistance having her own cooking show. Because wouldn't you want to see like a Cake Boss style show set in the Star Wars galaxy?
Yes. And I also raise you the Great British Baking Show.
Well, that, or like there's sports in Star Wars. We've seen race car driving or the equivalent of that. Like there's probably pro wrestling somewhere in Star Wars and we just haven't seen it. Like, again, going back to Attack of the Clones, there's a sports bar. Everyone's watching something in there. Like there are a million monitors connected to the HoloNet. So it makes sense that like anything can be Star Wars if you want it to be. Be it sports, be it a cooking show, be it what we've already gotten. Like there are so many ways to tell a story, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet for Star Wars. So keep that open mind. Number 4, opinions are not facts. Instead of saying with all your chest, this is good/bad, just say this is/isn't for me. This goes back to people on the internet thinking they're right when really it's you just have an opinion that you're very strong about. That's fine. Does not mean it's the truth. It's just how you feel. Star Wars is about feeling. So feel what you need to feel, but don't try to make other people feel the same way. Just like let it happen naturally. Again, light side versus dark side. Light side lets things happen naturally and just works with all life. Dark side tries to manipulate things to bend to its will. So keep that in mind. Number 5, Star Wars is a fictional depiction of real life. These aren't just action flicks. These are pieces of art with themes, messages, and life lessons that are there to teach us to be better people. Again, I was saying that earlier. We want to really tackle the themes, the messages, the life lessons that Star Wars has to teach us. Because a lot of people seem to miss the memo because they're obsessed with like what they think makes a good movie, or good writing or bad writing, or good character development or bad character development. But art is meant to teach us something. It's meant to say something. And we're going to tackle what these pieces of art have to say. Rule number 6, Star Wars is also a fictional depiction of real life with characters named Savage Opress, Dr. Quadpa, and I'm a Gundai. Things with serious messages in them can also be silly at the same time. Basically, we are gonna talk about a lot of serious stuff, but we're not forgetting what we're talking about. This is something that is meant to be silly at times. This is something that's meant to be fun and sell children's toys. Art can be more than one thing. It can be meant to sell a children's toy, and it can also be meant to tell you, hey, fascism is bad. So just keep that in mind. Rule number 7. All spoilers are fair game. We are going to talk as if the panelists and the viewers and listeners of this show have all seen everything Star Wars. Some of the things we're going to be discussing today, we're going to tie it back to other Star Wars stuff that we won't get to talk about in length for several episodes, if not maybe 20 to 30 to 40 episodes from now. But we are going to tie those things back, again, which kind of relates back to rule 1 of things you might dislike about Star Wars. Here's something where they did the same thing where you might have liked it, that sort of thing. And our final rule, which is just something I thought would be hilarious to put in. If Kiadi Mundi says something out loud, always assume he's somehow factually incorrect. You're going to understand very quickly watching and listening to this show that I have so many issues with Kiadi Mundi. Everything he said throughout his entire canonical run was factually incorrect. And it doomed the galaxy, I swear to God. The events of the original trilogy are a result of Kiadi Mundi's decisions in the prequels. Maybe not entirely him, but he's a great embodiment of everything the Jedi Council did wrong. Anyway, those are the rules of the show. Again, if you're ever confused about what this show is about and what it stands for, please go back to that, and we shall. And that should fill you in. That should fill you in. Anyway, we're like almost 30 minutes into the show, and we haven't even discussed what we came here to discuss. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. We're talking about Tales of the Jedi, episodes 2, 3, and 1, because canonically that is the order according to Wikipedia. 2, 3, and 1, because one of these has Ahsoka literally being born, and Dooku was alive way before that. So it makes total sense for these things to play out this way. My throat's getting really dry and scratchy the longer I talk. I might not last very long. But anyway, we're going to make this work. Anyway, we're starting off with Tales of the Jedi, Episode 2, Justice. This episode was directed by Saul Ruiz and written by Dave Filoni. It aired on October 26, 2022 on Disney+. The official description, according to Wikipedia, 2 Jedi are dispatched to resolve a hostage situation on a distant planet. I'm going to read the plot according to Wikipedia, and then we can just talk about the little details here and there as we want to go along. So first, the plot reads, the rescue mission. Jedi Master Dooku and his Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn arrive at a planet unnamed in shuttle. They land outside a dilapidated village with its residents slamming doors and closing windows at their arrival, unfriendly towards outsiders. Eventually, the two find a cantina and enter. Dooku has a question for those inside. Where is the senator's son? An older woman offers to speak. The son of Dagonet, the planet's representative in the Galactic Senate, has been kidnapped, and the Jedi have been sent to rescue him. Dooku quickly realizes, however, that all of the villagers appear to be complicit in the abduction. The village elder admits to the crime, pointing out that Dagonet's long service to the Republic has done everything to enrich him at the expense of his people. The skirmish. She takes Dooku and Qui-Gon to the barn where the son is being held. He says he's been treated well and sympathizes with the plight of the people, saying he didn't know anything beforehand as he was usually on Coruscant or in the planet's capital. The discussion is interrupted by word that Dagonet has come in person with soldiers. The elder accuses the Jedi of tricking her, but Dooku says that they came without the senator's knowledge. The villagers arm themselves and they leave the barn with the Jedi. Dooku attempts to get Dagonet to stand down, noting that his people are angry with him for good reason. The senator refuses, and a firefight breaks out. The Jedi defend the villagers, but several are still struck down. Excuse me. As the deaths mount, Dooku takes a rash action and force chokes the senator, throwing Qui-Gon away with the force when he tries to stop him. Qui-Gon goes back into the barn and frees Dagonet's son from his binders, telling him to go out there and save his father. Justice and mercy. The son's intervention leads Dooku to release the senator, as the son expresses disappointment in his father. Excuse me.
No problem. You can get some water in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, get drink.
I need a drink.
Yeah, we don't need some. I feel like somebody out there might be force choking you right now, Nico. So we don't need that.
Let's get into the part of the episode where Dooku force chokes. That's probably it.
Exactly. That's what's happening.
Okay, I'm good. The son's intervention leads Dooku to release the senator as the son expresses disappointment in his father. Dooku tells Qui-Gon that he acted wiser than his master on that day and that he will be a great Jedi. At the village, as father and son prepare to leave, Dagonet's son solemnly promises the village elder that he will help her people. Okay, that is the rundown of the plot, and I just want to go through the cast list real quick. Dooku is played by Corey Burton, who is reprising his role from the Clone Wars. Forgive me if I butcher this pronunciation, but I think it's Michael, but it's spelled differently. Mikhail Richardson as Qui-Gon Jinn. That is Liam Neeson's son, not Michael Richardson from Seinfeld, but that is Liam Neeson's son portraying young Qui-Gon here. Mark Rolston playing Senator Dagonet, Josh Keaton playing the senator's son, and Harrison Dula herself, Vanessa Marshall, coming back to play the village elder who dresses like a pilgrim. As a matter of fact, a lot of the humans who live on the village that we're going to be discussing here, a lot of them dress like pilgrims, in my opinion. But anyway, to give myself a break from talking, Zadius, how'd you feel about this episode?
Oh, I like this episode a lot. And while originally, I will say this: Dooku has never been one of my favorite characters. And as I was mentioning in the beginning, he was just somebody in episode 2 that he was there to me. He was just a villain to me. And like, okay, cool lightsaber. He was the first one with the hilted tilt with lightsaber, which I thought was cool. But he was just a regular villain to me, and I understood that he used to be a Jedi. But I'm like, okay, cool villain. But when I came back to this episode, I'm seeing a young Dooku, and I'm like, okay, so I'm guessing this is how we're gonna start seeing how he becomes Darth Tyrannus eventually. I think that's who he eventually becomes. But so this is his path to become a Sith. Okay, this is interesting. We're seeing how he's going to be this way. Like, is this going to make me like him more or not? And everything he does in this episode, I 100% am on his side to a point. When I feel like he should have stopped choking the guy, when I understood the anger and I understood why and what would make him want to do it. But I felt like when he brought him to his knees, okay, you've shown off your power, let him go. But he started walking him down pretty much. I'm like, okay, Dooku, like, calm down, stop. The battle's over. You won. But if not for Qui-Gon releasing the son to calm him down, yeah, this could have definitely shifted my view of Dooku again to a negative side. But again, I thought he was justified in most of the things he did in this episode, especially seeing how careless and reckless the senator was with the people that he was supposed to be caring for. So, yeah.
Sean.
I have a lot of similar thoughts as Adius. And one thing especially I wanted to point out is I was seeing a lot of parallels in episodes 2 and 3 with Dooku and Anakin. Not just because of the whole, Jedi to Sith kind of thing, because they both follow that, but I think it's really cool to see two very different journeys to get there. and to kind of like reverse engineer, like, all right, we know Dooku becomes Darth Tyrannus. Like, what is the tipping point for him? And like Anakin, you can rationalize. He's a young Jedi. He's a little reckless. He's really eager to become a Jedi Master. Not quite there yet. A little bit careless. But we don't see that with Dooku. Like, Dooku seems like the definition of there's a method to my madness. And he's so calculated. And he's always thinking. And it's just... it's crazy to think that like somebody who has that much composure, except, you know, when force choking a senator, will turn to the Sith. And I haven't finished Tales of the Jedi yet, so I'm excited to see, you know, what his journey is like in these last couple episodes.
Mm-hmm. You know, when you were talking, you just reminded me of a line that was said in this episode, which I thought kind of just shows how loyal Dooku is to. Dagonet says that tells Dooku that, hey, you serve the Senate pretty much, but Dooku like rebuttals like, no, we serve the people of the Republic. Like, in layman's term, like, yo, I don't give a darn about what y'all think about and what the Senate wants us to do. I'm looking out for the well-being of the people, the people that the Senate is supposed to be caring for, the same people that you're over here, you just carelessly shot down. So like, Dooku, I have nothing bad again besides the fact that I think he went a smidge too far. Like 100% on Dooku's side in this episode.
Dooku is the reason I have alleged Sith in my name right now. Like, there were very few things I could disagree with him about.
Mm-hmm.
Every villain is the hero of their own story. Somewhere along the way, which we'll get to in a couple episodes of this podcast, Dooku lost his way. But here he's like right at the height of being Team Jedi. And it's not until like the end of the episode and a little bit in the next episode, which we'll get to later, that he kind of starts wondering, he really starts questioning, am I on the right team? No, if you think about it, like, and you were mentioning Dooku being calculated, like, if you think about it, other than Ben Solo, Dooku was the only dark side user who never had the yellow eyes. Because he never really let his anger get the better of him. Like that, you only got the yellow eyes if you were like full of pure rage, pure hatred, pure anger. Whereas Dooku was more of like a gentleman monster. He was able to keep his composure and like be regal and like, I mean, his robes, his cape, like he looks like he comes from royalty, which he actually does, but he kind of gave that up to be a Jedi for the time being until he left the Order and then took up the mantle of Count. That was his birthright. But sorry, still struggling with the throat. I've been sick for a couple of days. I haven't really been able to breathe through my nose that much. I want to get to a couple things in this episode visually and how it ties to themes and whatnot. When the ship, first off, the Republic is really in love with the dark red and white or green color scheme when it comes to their ships. Like you look at any Lego sets with like the Republic gunships from the Clone Wars itself. And the shuttles that they use for traveling Jedi and or senators, it's always red and white or red and gray. They love that color scheme, and it's fine. It works. It pops.
It's even one of the color schemes of Cal Kestis' ship in Fallen Order. I'll tell you that. Like, yeah, so you're completely right about that.
Absolutely. It's something that is Star Wars. It's become a part of Star Wars in a way. God, my nose is stuffy. The planet itself, or at least the parts of it we get to see, it looks as malnourished as the people living within it. Again, specifically that village, to the point that droids are collapsing in agony. Like. A droid had a "I have fallen and I can't get up" moment when it was trying to carry that cargo to the cart. And if you think about it, when their shuttle first enters the planet's atmosphere. Everything is green and luscious. You see all kinds of I think those are pine trees. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a botanist. I don't really know what kind of trees those were, but they were luscious and green. And then they get to the village. They park outside of it. And everything is just ravaged. It looks like scorched earth. It looks like a scar. In a way, it kind of reminds me of that one episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender from season 1, where they meet the spirit from the winter solstice that was actually a panda bear but looked like a monster at first. I think people who know Avatar get what I'm saying, and I'm just forgetting the name of that spirit right now.
It's oh my god, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The spirit of the forest.
Yes.
Yeah, like when the forest was ravaged and destroyed, and that spirit would come up. That's essentially what this reminded me of. Is like, it's all just death. It's all just death. Like the first thing Qui-Gon sees when he gets off the shuttle is, I think it was a decayed body. I don't know if it was like a human remain or an alien remain, or if it was like a machine remain. But it was like something wasn't alive there, and he was like getting a firsthand look at it, and it was mossy and decayed and gross. On a more positive note, we're seeing like normal mice and dogs in Star Wars for the first time, I think, at least as far as I can recall, which is kind of cool.
I agree. It makes you feel like, okay, so makes you look at your own pets, but so I see a little hint of reality here.
That threw me for a loop. I really thought it was gonna have like a head sticking out of its ass or something. And I was just like, all right, where's the twist here?
Maybe a little extra dog coming out of his mouth.
Listen. Dave Filoni is an avid lover of wolves, and he got to put wolves in Star Wars, specifically in Rebels, and they look like normal wolves. They have some force properties to them, but they look like normal wolves. So it makes sense that a normal-looking dog and a normal-looking mouse would also be there. Also, a squirrel, which we'll talk about later. That was in the Ahsoka one that we'll talk about later.
Episode 1.
Yes. The contrast of Dooku's robes, I think I mentioned this before, to the blandness of Qui-Gon's. It's kind of foreshadowing of the ego-driven power trip that will later drive Dooku towards the dark side, because Qui-Gon never really forgot who he was and where he came from. In a sense, neither did Dooku, because he never forgot he was from royalty, as evident by the way he dresses. But with that royalty, there is an arrogance that comes with it, and it's essentially what drives him to make the decisions he makes that leads him down the path he takes. I thought the houses that all these villagers were living in, albeit they were kind of broken down and run down, aesthetically they looked kind of cool. It was like it was like a nice combination of brick, metal, and wood. It was like old timey pilgrim stuff meets Star Wars technology in a way.
Very old timey, a little bit.
Yeah. Again, I said that some of these villagers were dressed like pilgrims.
Yeah, I felt bad for them. I really did. They made me feel for them. Like, again, that just made me on their side more when we got later in the episode.
Let's see here. I wrote a lot of notes down, and I'm just trying to get through them all. So when Dooku said that they were there to solve the situation, and the old lady replies, "For the senator," and then Qui-Gon replies, "For everyone." So this kind of shows that Dagonet, this senator who is supposed to be serving his people, the fact that he hasn't has caused these people to lose faith in the system, whereas Qui-Gon, he still believes that he's on the right team. He still believes in what the Jedi and the Republic are doing. Or at the very least, he believes in the message of what the Jedi and the Republic should be, which is something we're going to get to, I think, maybe when we recap all three of these episodes into, like, how do all these tie together. It's like being religious versus religious organization in the sense of Jedi versus Jedi Order. And in this case, it's like individual versus collective, and that collective is like government, and government should be functioning, but it's not because individuals can be corrupted. I think I was making a point, and that I'm not sure where it was going. Again, this is the difficult thing about a lot of these real life themes, is that you can interpret them a lot of different ways, and it can sometimes be hard to, even when you've written this many notes, it's kind of hard to put it all together and into words.
I think I got what you were talking about, because I feel like episode 2 really focuses on kind of more of the failings of the Senate in this episode. And while the next made 2, the next one kind of focuses on the failings a little bit of something else in my eyes, but we'll get there when we get there. But I think this episode it focuses on the failings of the government, but also of how some senators, like you said, can be corrupted, and then how it can have a trickle down effect on the people. So yeah, I understood what you were going with.
Yeah, I really liked how you touched on the religious theme a little bit at first, because I think that's kind of a perfect example of what, like, the two different sides that Qui-Gon and Dooku are on.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's almost to the point where Dooku has seen too much of it to know that it is a flawed system, and like, he doesn't blame anyone for not buying into it, but he's not gonna, like, it's not all hail the system. Whereas I think at this point, I don't know if Qui-Gon has gotten there yet. And like, just in his actions throughout the episode, I got the sense that, like, Qui-Gon is really trying to become into his own, but is like, just has a very limited worldview and hasn't seen enough to, like, really iron himself in what is really going on.
Yeah, Qui-Gon 1000% seemed shocked and appalled at what he saw when he got off that ship. Dooku, like you said, like, it's almost like in his head, like, I've seen something like this before.
At the same time, you mentioned Dooku has seen some shit Qui-Gon has not, and so Dooku has kind of been like, I'm over this, whereas in a sense that also kind of works the other way around, because it's like, Dooku is so fed up with at least in the next episode of Tales of the Jedi, Dooku will be so fed up with the Jedi Order that it will cause him to leave. Whereas Qui-Gon is still very much Team Jedi. He believes in what the Order is doing. But at the same time, that belief is what's driving Qui-Gon to be the best Jedi he can be. He's embodying what it means to be a Jedi. Whereas the more Dooku becomes pissed off with the ways of the Jedi Order and of the Senate, the less he is following the teachings of what it means to be a Jedi in a sense. And that's going to tie in heavily to something we talk about with the Ahsoka episode, specifically the final line at the end of the episode. But anyway, getting back to this, I want to bring up something that it's mentioned that Senator Dagonet is one of the longest standing senators in the Republic, and yet the planet he serves is in the shitter. Qui-Gon asks the village elder, why not just elect someone else? And her response is, it's not that simple. Interpret that however you want, but that leads me to believe that there's like some government corruption going on, some election rigging, some potential bribery. Maybe no one is brave enough to run for office for reasons XYZ. And that's where it becomes complicated, because how many people, like, we just had an election, for example, like Sean and I live in Pennsylvania. Zad, you live in Texas. Those are both very crucial states when it comes to the American political system. We just elected John Fetterman, someone who, for the most part, has a strong reputation for being a man of the people and has managed to stay connected. He has never forgotten where he has come from. He has always been a man of the people in a sense. Now, will being a senator change him in any way, shape, or form? We'll find out as his term begins in January.
He's worn a suit for the first time I think I've ever seen him wear, so that's one change.
I did it also because he felt like he had to just to get people to shut up. But it is what it is. Meanwhile, Zad, you live in Texas. You deal with fuckers like Greg Abbott all the time. Like I know, like you guys had terrible winters. I think last year that like knocked out the entire power grid, and he did diddly squat to help you. Our buddy RJ was really fucked up by that. So we've seen both sides of the coin of like eventually when you're in politics you kind of forget where you come from and any good intentions you may have go out the window if you don't stay connected to those people who got you there in the first place. And it seems like Dagonet may have forgotten where he came from, how he got there, and it's blinded him to how much of a dick he's become and when the consequences of of his policies, like leaving his people, like you can see the bones coming out of their faces. They're that malnourished.
And at some point in politics, it just becomes about money. That's all I'll say for now. I don't want to get too mad because, yeah.
Like, thankfully, we had people like Padme Amidala and the Organa family who managed to not let those things corrupt them. Mon Mothma as well. Let's see here. Where are we in my notes? Oh yeah, being in politics a long time can cause you to lose your way. I already said that. Mention the pilgrim garb. Like that's just a joke that I'm gonna keep hitting. For, like seriously, they look like Thanksgiving pilgrims. Like like it reminds me so much of it reminds me so much of the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special in a way.
Well, Charlie Brown Thanksgiving was a little bit more happy than this episode. Come on, man. The people, at least they were happy. Well, yeah, there might have been some of that, but these people, this is feel like what Charlie Brown Thanksgiving episode is in the future, maybe.
Fair enough. One of the connecting themes of all these episodes we're going to talk about today is a sense of community. We are seeing what happens when a community is ravaged by poor decision making, but we are also seeing, in the case of this community, they are coming together. They are banding together to kidnap the senator's son, but they are still banding together just so they could get the attention of the Republic that they were suffering. And this is also proving a point. This is proving a belief that I have that protesting, the practice of protesting has to always be inconvenient for someone, specifically someone in power, in order to be effective. Like just holding a sign out on a random corner of the street, that's not really going to do much in the long run. You actually have to, like, as inconvenient as it is, stage sit-ins, block traffic, get the attention. Yes, but you have to like do marches. You have to do what you can in the most lawful ways possible to, but also in somewhat inconvenient ways possible to get the attention of people who will listen or who will share your message on social media, and that way you can get the attention. Like this is their desperate attempt to get the attention they need to make things better for themselves. And essentially it did kind of work out that way because eventually the sun kind of comes to their relief. But it was mentioned that the senator's son rarely leaves the capital and he only goes off world to Coruscant whenever he takes a sabbatical. So he had no idea this was going on. And it's kind of refreshing to see, like, just like how Qui-Gon was when he got off the ship. Like, oh my God, what has happened here? The son has the same reaction to that. Like, he is seeing, oh God, what has happened here? This is horrible.
I love how he tells his dad accountable for it.
Not only that, he has no malice towards his kidnappers.
Yeah, he's pretty empathetic for him, which is I thought was great. I mean, to say that he, like you say, he had just been kidnapped by these people. He could have been full of malice, like you said, but he was full of empathy and sad.
And this brings up something that my manager at work constantly says to me. Like, he is a very black and white thinker. And he is like, doesn't matter if you steal a penny or if you steal $10,000, stealing is stealing. I am of the belief that reasoning does matter. Context does matter, especially considering if you are struggling for a certain amount of time, and depending on how hard the struggle is, desperate times will cause you to make desperate choices. Star Wars is about choices. It's about what path do you want to follow? What choice do you want to make? What side do you want to join? And the thing is, when people, both in fictional worlds and in our world, when they see, I'm losing my breath again. God damn.
They're trying to stop you, Nico. Don't worry.
Oh, I need to blow my nose at some point. Anyway, when people see no way out, when people see no relief, their desperation causes them to do arguably stupid things, but they're making desperate choices to find some kind of relief. Like, there was an episode of Family Guy once where, like, Joe's son from who went AWOL from Iraq, he came back for Thanksgiving, and he tells a story at the Thanksgiving table about how he was most proud of his dad when he opted not to arrest someone for stealing a can of soup on Thanksgiving because he was poor and his family needed to eat. So it's like, if we just open our hearts to a little bit of empathy and sympathy, we can understand why people make the choices they make and realize, they might not have just seen a way out of this horrible situation that they're in, and they made a desperate choice. And that's essentially what the son sees here with these villagers. Is he's like, they had no other option. They were starving, and my dad wasn't doing diddly squat to help them.
And like, even the droids were collapsing. Like,
Yeah,
come
right?
on. Like, come on.
Except for Two-Ton, who was Two-Ton was he was staying sturdy.
But wasn't it Two-Ton his droid though?
Mm-hmm.
I think he was more so the prison guard that just the son made friends with.
Okay, maybe so. Yeah, because I got Two-Tons that come in my. I'm like, okay, did you bring the droid with you? Well, yeah. That in hindsight, that kind of doesn't like. Why would you kidnap the son plus his droid? So yeah. That doesn't,
especially like, how do you kidnap a droid that fucking big?
That's true. Very true.
Like, that droid could easily fight its way out of an abduction.
Hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. I mean,
true. One thing that stuck out to me was, if you remember back towards earlier in the episode, Qui-Gon is like asking around for directions, or like, excuse me, if they've seen the sun anywhere, and a door got slammed in his face.
mm-hmm.
The lady who slammed the door in his face, the dog owner, was also the one who ratted out the village to Senator Dagonet.
Mm-hmm.
And she did it in exchange for food. And the village elder, when Dooku was looking pissed off, the village elder stood up for her and was like, listen, you see our situation. We're all hungry. We're all desperate. Any of us would have done that in exchange for food. We don't blame her. We're all victims of circumstance here. And again, it's people making desperate choices to get out of desperate situations. Choices. That's a reoccurring theme in Star Wars. It's going to be a topic in every single one of our podcasts.
Maybe even the title. Continue.
Yes. Completely off topic. I love the wardrobe of the guards and of the senator.
Yeah.
The blue and gold. Yeah, I did like that. Blue and gold and white. Yeah.
It seemed like very regal coloring. Like, it gave the Senate and the guards the impression of, like, we are like this holier than thou, like, type of entity. Like, because blue and gold are pretty overwhelmingly positive. Like, they're portrayed very positively when they're used. And I thought that was just I always think it's cool when like some form of media uses like those kind of out of character colors to describe a villain.
Mhm.
I know. It's like in Star Wars, it usually plays out that the people with the most swag are also the biggest d bags in a sense. Like,
Very true.
like
That is
look,
very true.
think about back in the original, back in the prequel trilogy, all of Palpatine's robes, like he always looked fly. Even when even when he was in pure wrinkly face form from having been lightninged, like the red robes he wore in his office when Yoda goes to confront him, he looked fly.
Like
You you don't even have to go as far as just back to Palpatine. Like in Episode 1, the moment you see Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon the whole time and they're brown and white and like, okay, y'all, not gonna say y'all look like bad, but y'all just look kind of plain. But that first time when when that door opens and you see Maul, first of all, the whole color scheme, black on black with the red face and red and black face too, red lightsaber Pippin. He's completely swagged out. Like, dude, you made black look good, dude.
Mandalorian armor. Back when we thought
Yep.
that, like,
Yep.
back when Django and Boba were our only,
Mandalorians. Whoa.
yeah, and we
Yeah.
thought they were bad guys. Like
But-
they had the coolest looking armor, so it was like bad guys with the swag, like over and over and
even
over again. It's
4,
a
5, and
recurring
6
theme.
with Darth Vader.
Yep.
Nobody else looked as badass as Darth Vader did in any movie ever
That's
at
very
that
true.
point in time. Like,
Although in hindsight, we now realize that armor was a bitch to wear because like it did absolutely nothing for his health. Like the Empire had money that Palpatine could have used to make him a better suit, and Palpatine just chose not to because he's like, I want to make sure this guy has to struggle if he ever wants to overthrow me.
Mhm.
Same goes for like the lack of railings in the Death Star and Imperial ships, but that again, that's a discussion for a way in the future.
don't let OSHA get close to the Death Star.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. When we're about to have that shootout, if you look at the faces on some of the locals as they have their rifles drawn, some of them are emotionally prepared to kill the hierarchy. They're prepared to kill their oppressor because it's like, I need to do what I need to do to get food, to survive. This guy is affecting my ability to live. I need to do something. Meanwhile, that poor bald guy and a
Yeah.
few other villagers, he was shaking in his boots.
Mhm.
He was like, I want to be anywhere else but here. He was like on the verge of tears because he did not want to be holding a rifle and about to shoot upon the royal guard of his planet senator.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if this is the guy you're talking about, the one that kind of looked a little bit similar to Bill Organa a little bit. Like he was literally holding his rifle, looking around like, are we really about to do this? Like, come on, man, can we stop this? Like, he was so shook.
If Bail Organa had male pattern baldness, I could see that being him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean, any thoughts on that?
Nothing new.
Okay. I have a quote here. Dagonet to Dooku, you serve the Senate. Dooku to Dagonet, no, we serve the people of this republic. Zad, this is something you brought up when we were first discussing our thoughts about this episode.
Mhm.
It encompasses the way things should be, but it's not encompassing the way things are.
Very true. Very true.
Yep.
And it also shows you how maybe jaded. I don't want to say jaded is the word, but I'll say semi jaded. How kind of semi jaded that Dooku is a little bit in the way that he knows that we serve the people, and in his mind, like the Senate should be serving the people, too. But he also knows that they're not, and that this land is clear failure by the Senate. That the Senate is failing, and I think that again kind of leads to his decisions in the future,
It's like
especially in
going.
this episode.
It's like going back to what we were talking about earlier with Dooku just being a realist. Like he
Mhm.
knows what's going on. He knows what should be done. He knows what he wants to do, and he knows it's not getting done.
Oh, and getting back to the contrast in the villagers, and like you can tell which ones want to be there and which ones don't. Qui-Gon looks like he doesn't want to be there either. He looks like he's like, I don't want to fight. I don't want violence to break out here. Um, and we see how that plays out in a little bit. There's a true battle of egos going on. When so after the village elder gets knocked down from a blast, and Qui-Gon goes to her side to aid her. That's when Dagonet basically threatens to destroy the whole town as a show of power, and then Dooku just strangles him, and Qui-Gon gets pushed to the side, literally and figuratively, and this is where the ego of Dooku starts to show itself greatly, and like it was already prevalent in Dagonet, but it's like the battle of the egos is taking place here, and when Qui-Gon goes to like free Dagonet's son, it's the younger generation without ego and only good, pure hearts that stops the fight and mends things for the better. Like they tell them, knock it off before anyone else dies, and they do something they'll regret. And it's kind of symbolic of the new generation trying to make up for the mistakes of the old, which is a theme that is kind of touched on in the sequel trilogy of like Luke Skywalker's mistakes, and Rey is there to sort of make up for them and try and do better. It like Yoda says it herself. Yoda says it himself. Failure is the greatest teacher we could possibly have, and it's like these two old heads have failed on that day, and it was clear heads of the next generation that prevailed in that sense, because like. Who was it that made the promise to the village at the end of the episode of like, things will get better? It was the son. It wasn't the father. It wasn't the senator. It was his son, which means his son is either going to run for office himself or he's going to hold his father accountable and remind him every day, because he already reminded him after he saved his father. How could you do this? These are your people. These are our people. And I think and I think if you look at the senator's face in that moment, that's when he kind of started to realize, I have forgotten where I came from, and he realized the magnitude of the mistakes he had made, and like he needed to be woken up and be reminded of where he came from and who he represents. Because if you look at when he's just sitting there in that speeder, he feels so disappointed in himself. He can barely even look at his son. He can barely even look at the villagers. Like he is ashamed, and he feels guilty because he knows he has to make up for it now, and he knows his son is never going to let him forget it.
Part of me also feels his ego is bruised though, because I feel like he just realized he's not that hot shit. And what I mean by that, when I say is, he just got completely bested by Dooku, and the power that he thought he had, it's kind of been just washed away. And yes, he's still a senator, but I just feel like he's kind of stewing in his own stuff. Like it's like, wow, I just got put in my place, and then I had to have my son rescue me. And yes, I do think at the same time he's guilty, but I also feel like his ego is definitely bruised now too.
Considering the ego we see from him, like, we know he's not stupid. So at the very least, we know he's like, I probably shouldn't press this issue too hard after almost getting force choked to death by a Jedi. Like, you got to pick and choose your battles. And I think the senator at that point realized that it was not a battle he should pick.
One more note about that force choke, by the way. What made Dooku force choke Dagonet? Desperation. He heard what Dagonet was going to do to the town in a show of power, and he's like, I got to do something. I got to put these people in there. I got to put this guy in his place so these other people don't get hurt. And that's when he went for the force choke. Like desperation. And couple more things here, and then we'll move on to the next episode. So when the son promised to end the town's suffering, we see immediate change, or at least an immediate sign that they're going to uphold that promise, because some of the royal guards stayed in the village and actually helped clean things up. Like one was helping patch up a guy who I think got shot or wounded in the fight from earlier. We see one petting a dog. We see one helping put a cart back together. And not only that, but the sky, the scenery looks actually brighter. Now, granted, it was doomy, gloomy, and also kind of nighttime when they first arrived on the planet. So, like, right now we're kind of in the midst of a cloudy sunrise, but still, the theme is there of like, we're going to see a brighter day. This town is going to bounce back. And I think that was nice little symbolism there.
Agree. I completely agree with you. It was literally the dawning of a new day, a new. I didn't want to go wrestling there, but yeah, it was the dawning of a new day, a new hope, pretty much for the people of that planet, which we knew the name of that planet, but we don't. It was unnamed.
Yeah, it was unnamed. And by the way, I'm one of the New Day's biggest fans, so you can make all the references you want to them.
I was about to say, yes, it is.
Listen, I have a Chris Jericho reference that I'm saving for a couple episodes of this podcast in the future. So trust me, it's going to be well worth it to make all the wrestling. I'm a wrestler. You can make all the references you want.
Good point.
At least one of us will get them.
Yes. So I want to just read the final quote here from this episode. I wonder if any meaningful change will come of this. Is that why you took action into your own hands? Your actions saved many lives today. Just thinking in the moment, Master. Well then, you're a much wiser man than I, Qui-Gon Jinn. Thanks to your teachings. So that's a little back and forth between Dooku and Qui-Gon. And it's very reminiscent of something we'll be talking about next week, The Phantom Menace, where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have a very similar discussion of like, referring to them as, you are a much wiser man than I am, thanks to your teachings, that sort of thing. So again, it's like in Star Wars, George Lucas always said it's like poetry, it rhymes, and this is this is, in a sense, they're retroactively making something more valuable in the future by having a parallel to it of like, oh, this master said it to this apprentice, now the apprentice is passing it on to his own apprentice in a future medium, which is kind of cool. And I'll let you get your thoughts on that in just a moment. But Dooku says something at the very beginning of that quote, and it's, I wonder if any meaningful change will come of this. The guards being there helping the town, that is a sign that things might change for the better. But meaningful change versus superficial change is an entirely different thing.
Agree. It's like, okay, you're doing this now. But when y'all get back home and when you get back to Coruscant, are y'all still going to remember the ordeal that y'all went through today? Are you still going to remember the people and what they need you to do when you get back into your position of supposed power? Like, don't just let the lessons that you learned leave with you. Like, stay on this planet. Like you said, do something meaningful when you get back to your position of power. When you get back to your Senate seat, fight for it.
It's like a politician going to a food bank. Like, are they going to the food bank to help just for the clout, just to like post on social media and say, hey, I did a great thing, here's like why you should like me? Or is this something that they're going to continue to do because they're good people? Clearly we know the senator is not, or well, maybe up for debate, but are the guards? We know his son is a pretty good person, so like, it's anyone's guess.
Yeah, I don't want to see pictures of Senator Dagonet on a fight somewhere, taking his family to an island or somewhere while his people are starving in the cold winter. I'm sorry, on the while his people are just starving and broke down and the village is burnt over. Yes.
Sorry, I got a text and it kind of threw me off.
No.
But so yeah. Obviously, the way things play out in terms of the Republic itself, we kind of know that like things change, not for the better over time, but things change. As for this planet in particular, in between this episode here and how things play out when the Empire takes over, I'm curious to know if this planet ever actually saw the change it needed, especially that town, that village. Like, do they ever actually see the light at the end of the tunnel that they needed?
Yeah, I'm very curious if this is the same Planet Episode 6. But I'm not sure, and we'll get there eventually, but I'm not sure if that planet's ever named too. And by the way, I mean Episode 6 of the series.
One last little note about this episode: it's apparently the first canonical appearance of a wagon in Star Wars.
Really?
like not like there have definitely been wagons in Star Wars, but this one I guess is the first canonical appearance.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's a weird thing.
I never would have thought that before. That's hilarious.
It's on Wikipedia. Usually people are accurate with that shit.
It's gonna be the first canonical appearance for a lot of things, I feel like.
Okay. As we continue this episode where we're kind of working out the kinks of what this podcast will become down the road, Tales of the Jedi Episode 3 is the next one on the list, and that episode title is Choices. The episode was directed by Charles Murray, written by Charles Murphy, written by Charles and Elon Murphy. Why am I saying Murphy? God damn it.
Is it Murphy or Murray?
It's Murray, but for some reason I keep saying Murphy because I'm an idiot and I'm tired. Yes, Charles and Elon Murray, and it was released on October 26, 2022 on Disney Plus. Official description: Jedi Knights investigate the mysterious death of one of their own. Plot: Mission Araxis Secundus. Wow, that's a name. Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Dooku travel on a T6 shuttle to the planet Raxus Secundus. As the ship descends into the planet's atmosphere, Windu asks Dooku if he is satisfied with the account of Master Katri's death that was recorded in the tablet. Dooku is not satisfied with Senator Larrick's account and believes that there is more to the ambush that killed Master Katri. He also wonders how Senator Larrick escaped death. Master Windu asks Dooku why he is concerned with these questions. Dooku responds that the Jedi Council tasked them with returning Master Katri's body to the Jedi Temple for a proper burial. Since they are not members of the Council, Windu reminds Dooku that they cannot involve themselves in local political skirmishes without the authority of the Council or the Galactic Senate. Dooku responds that Windu's fidelity to the rules is inspiring, but sometimes maddening. The T6 shuttle docks at the landing platform in Raxilon, the capital of Raxus Secundus. After disembarking, the two Jedi are greeted by several armored soldiers led by Hanel. Windu tells the soldiers that they are here to see Senator Larrick. Hanel expresses condolences for the loss of Master Katri, saying that she is well respected and will be missed. The officer says that he will lead them to Senator Larrick. Questioning the senator. At his personal residence, Senator Larrick tells the Jedi that he was at his Coruscant residence when he was contacted by rebels since they were threatening war. Larrick decided to return to Raxus Secundus to hear them out. Master Dooku questions why the senator chose to go without a security detail. Larrick claims he wanted peace on Raxus and that he was willing to do anything about it. He says that he confided with Master Katri about the situation. Larrick claims that Katri refused to let him out of her sight and that she paid for it with her life. You know, this is taking forever. I'm just going to give you the cliff notes here. Larrick leads them to Katri's body. Dooku is still suspicious. Windu's also kind of suspicious now, but he's like, we should still be following protocol. Larrick is being very dramatic about what happened. He's like, going back would be very traumatizing. And then like literally 15 seconds later, he's like, let's go. That's essentially what happened. They make it to where the ambush happened. They realize they're like, oh, your story doesn't add up. Look at the blast marks on these trees, and yet there's no blast marks on the ship, so, which means friendly fire. A Jedi would not have been ambushed unless the attack came from someone she trusted and was not expecting, like you. Senator has a mental breakdown and is like, the guards did it. The guards shoot him. We get into this awesome shootout with like these cool battle droids that get slaughtered by a tree, and then like all that's left is what's his name? Samaj and what's the other guard's name? I had it written down. Yeah, Hannel. By the way, Samaj, he has an actual birthmark where he's like got two different eye colors. That is something I have not seen since UFC lightweight champion Jens Pulver, from all the way from like decades ago. Like he actually has two different eye colors, so it is a real medical condition that people can have. Anyway, they apprehend Samaj because Hannah was too big for his britches. Thought he would somehow shoot Master Windu down, and instead, he took a literal shot, and it literally backfired on him, and he died as a result. And Samaj confessed that like they got wind that the senator was selling off the planet's resources to off-world industrial companies, and he was going to bleed the world dry, all from the comforting seats of Coruscant. And so they killed Master Katri, so he had no defense, and they kept the senator alive, so he could essentially, so they could force him to write new policies and bring him to the next Senate hearing. Dooku is like, I don't agree with your methods, but I respect your tenacity and your willingness to fight for your planet. And Windu is still very much Team Jedi on this. He's like believing that the Jedi Order can do no wrong and that Katri would have listened. Would she? I don't know. Like, if this episode is designed to stir doubt in the ways of the Jedi Order, it's working. And Dooku thinks that because they caught Katri's killer, the ends justify the means. They do not, because Windu gets Katri's council seat because he stayed on mission. Dooku gets a stern talking to because he did not. And, Windu says something very interesting. He says, the Jedi are not guided by politics or ego. They're guided by the council. Guess what? The council made a decision based upon politics and ego of Windu followed protocol, Dooku did not. And so, and also a senator got killed. So for political and ego-based reasons, Windu is in the position he is now, and Dooku is in the position he is now for those reasons. And then we get a funeral for Katri, which Kiadi Mundi, goddammit, is leading it, and
I loved his hood.
why?
Yeah,
That's another thing that threw me off is why were some Jedi wearing their hoods up and others weren't? What was the protocol for that?
I don't know. The thing that got me about Kiadi Mundi's hood, and this hits such a chord with me, and I think I just lost sight of the rest of the episode because I was so focused on this. But when you wear a hoodie, goes typically sits on top of your head, right? Normally doesn't go under, or it's a head shape. It's a circular head shape that your head comes out of, right? Well, what the fuck is up with Kiadi Mundi's hood? It's got this circle shape like a normal head, but how does he get it over his head?
It's an extra large hood.
Just the mechanics of that hood confused me. And if we start talking about the last few minutes of the episode and I'm a little lost, blame Kiadi Mundi.
Oh, that's great. That's great. But anyway, we kind of went out of order. Basically, the funeral happens, then that talking to about, hey, you broke protocol. I got the council seat. Ha ha. Nuts to you. And then Dooku just stares off into the distance, and then the credits roll. So it's at that point in time, Dooku is basically questioning every single choice he's made to get to that point in life of like, fuck these guys. And to bring it back around to the beginning of the episode, Dooku was asking all the tough questions. Now, because of people like Alex Jones, I'm very skeptical when people start asking this many questions about a senator dying or something, or a high-powered figure getting murdered or things of that nature. The conspiracy people always want to believe that it's not what it actually is. And so that sort of spoke to me in a sense of like, are they making Dooku out to be the crazy guy, or is he right for feeling this skeptical? But then you look at Mace Windu in contrast, and the only question he's asking is, why are you asking so many questions, and why are you not following the rules we've been given?
Yeah, it's like you're getting the two extremes in that sense. Like I feel like it would feel more inclined to side with Mace Windu in this if like he had a little bit of human capabilities in any of his answers, because everything he is saying is just, oh, well, that's because what the Jedi Council said. That's the Jedi Council. Like he continues to just manage up and just doesn't seem like he really has opinions other than what the Jedi Council says. Where like, yes, Dooku is going down this rabbit hole of like conspiracy theorist thinking, but also if the only answers I was getting was because the Jedi Council said so, I'd be going crazy too.
Agree. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, say what you need to say. I'll wait.
No, it upset me so. Windu upset me so much in this episode, and going to what you were just saying, when I forgot who it was who asked the question, like, why don't you just tell Master Cadre? And then Samaj is the one saying that the Jedi are just a lapdog of the Senate, and Jedi claim that they keep the peace, but they mostly keep the law in the order for the rich and the powerful. And then Mace, with his happy-go-lucky ass, literally says, "Well, you should have told Master Cadre, like, she's a Jedi. She would have listened or something." Like, you don't get it. You don't get these people's plights at all. You're just so focused on, well, you should have told Cadre she's a Jedi. She would have told the council. But then what? Would that have gone anywhere? Like, no. And while again, I don't agree with everything that they did, but again, I see the desperation and why they did it. Like, it's just Windu's just so, like you said, he had no empathy for these people, and just completely, he sounded robotic in all of his answers to these people.
He was like one of the droids from episode 2.
Exactly. Roger. Yes. He upset me so much in this episode.
So, because Sam Jackson is so damn expensive, you can't really get him for these cartoons. So instead, you get T.C. Carson, who is a great voice actor.
He's great. I love him too.
But him voicing Mace Windu has highlighted everything that's wrong with this character. In terms of canon, this character is well written. He's just well written to be a dick. He's well written to be that one cop who is so blind to the other cops of corruption, because he's holding the badge proudly. Like T.C. Carson, because he's not Sam Jackson and because he doesn't have the aura of Sam Jackson, we are able to better see who Mace Windu is supposed to be as a character. Because if you think about it, going back to the prequel trilogy, Mace Windu did not like Anakin Skywalker at all. He basically bullied him into the dark side in a sense. Maybe that's not an entirely accurate statement, but he definitely tortured that kid psychologically.
I think I remember a time in episode 2 where when Anakin was like mad, and then Mace is like, "What? Yeah, we said what we said. What, you got something else to say? Something say something about it? But then again, I feel like I saw Sam Jackson as Mace Windu, not Mace Windu saying that. So
And when Sam Jackson says it, it's cool because it's Sam Jackson. But now we're essentially getting like TC Carson, who is a normal guy as far as we know. I don't mean for it to sound like we're ragging on the guy. Like I'm just saying like he Sam Jackson is just Sam Jackson.
yeah,
So
he's not Sam Jackson yet.
He's
literally
on his own tier.
literally anyone else doing Mace Windu as a character is gonna like not feel as special, but will still be good either way. And in this case, Mace Windu doesn't feel like Sam Jackson in the sense. Mace Windu feels like Mace Windu, and so we're getting a better sense of like who Mace Windu is supposed to be. And in this case, he is a guy who is not having his own opinions, maybe because he wants to get up there in the rankings of power in the Jedi Order. Again, we're getting to the nitty gritty of religion versus organized religion. And Mace Windu is all about the Order, and he wants to follow protocol. He wants to be the good soldier, and he's reaping the benefits of being a good soldier at the end of this episode. And it's that honestly, when he got to the council, I think that's when he started having opinions because that opinion was like, I do not want this kid to be trained. We do not grant you the rank of master. I'm going to make you hate me, and to the point that you will cut my hand off in the third movie.
Thank you, Nico. That's the moment I was thinking about. Yeah, like how can I be on the council but not be granted the rank of master? We told you what we said. Pretty much, that's what I was thinking about. Thank you.
I'm gonna push you off a building in a couple scenes from now.
I think it's also cool, like seeing Mace Windu. Like you can look back and see why Mace is treating Anakin the way he is because he's seeing this transformation in Dooku, like right in front of him.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
And
that's something I hadn't thought of.
I hadn't thought about that either.
And so I think that was something that I was really focused on because I'm like, because especially episode 2, like I think I was so blinded by seeing Dooku like with the blue lightsaber. I'm like, oh my god, how does he get the red? And immediately seeing him with Mace Windu, I was like, this feels like the adult way of like how Mace was treating Anakin. Or it's like at least he was willing to have a discussion and not like totally dismiss him, but in his mind, he's like, this guy's a moron.
Very condescending, very like uppity up, not giving him the time of day. And it's just like the longer Dooku's beard grows, the more pissed off he becomes with the Jedi Order, and the closer he becomes to joining the dark side. We getting to some of the other stuff that happened here. The acting of Senator Larrick, and I'm not talking about the actor himself. I'm talking about Senator Larrick and also the guards too, like Samaj and Hannel. They were hamming it up. Like some of the dialogue that Senator Larrick was reciting felt like he was trying to audition for Hamlet and wasn't making the cut. Like I think he used the words like devastating, traumatizing, horrific. Like he was getting choked up whenever, but it was like a phony choked up. Whenever he would finish like the final adjective that had an ly at the end of it, like he was really trying to sell that he had witnessed something traumatic, and it just never came off as believable. And I think that was the intent of the writers of the show, of this episode, to make it seem like maybe he did see something traumatic, or maybe he's like really phoning it in here. Or maybe either way, you could tell that there was something afoot and it wasn't totally kosher. And again, I have to hammer in the fact that he was like, to go back to the scene of her death, of the ambush, it would be devastating. then Samaj says something, and 15 seconds later, he's like, "Let's go." And like that was so hilarious to me. Of like, and Mace Windu is just taking this all um, at,
Face
at, at
value.
at face value, and Dooku is like, "Come on, man, use your brain here." And like we actually see good detective work when they get to the scene of the crime. There, he's focusing on the directions of the blaster bolts of how they hit the trees. He's focusing on the fact that there's nothing on the ship to suggest the fight was two-sided, and like everything is found out. The truth comes. I love the line of "I will have the truth," like just that determination in his voice of "I will have the truth." Um, and mentioning that for a Jedi to succumb to a surprise attack is rare unless that attack is from someone one would trust, like you. Some really good lines there, and I love the Form 2 of lightsaber combat. The one-handed style. That's why the curved hilt is there, so that he can use it one-handed, because essentially, like, Dooku was modeled more so based on, like, I think the Count of Monte Cristo, like fencing, things of that nature.
Makes sense.
Because like the original trilogy was all about the samurai style of heavy two-handed swings, and then they got very acrobatic in the prequels. And so like Dooku, his style was modeled a little bit after fencing, and a curved hilt really supports one-handed combat very well. The way he mixed it up with the force of like slicing the tree and then pushing it forward to befall the droids, that was really nice. Any thoughts here, guys?
I thought Lyric was hilariously hokey and an idiot. If I say idiot, I would say he was nervous, but the fact that how he just ran like while Duke was like, "I will have the truth." First of all, homie, keep the lie going, keep the lie going, lie. Don't just go, "Oh, it's the guards. The guards. They're the ones who shot her. They're the ones who shot her. That means they're about to shoot you, idiot. Be smart about it. Go and offer like, well, actually, if you look over here at this burn mark over here, go towards Jedi, be like, yo, it was them. Like, protect me. Be smart about it." But he was just so nervous and so it's so much into his acting and like, oh, it was devastating and traumatizing. I can't believe we're back here. And like, oh my god, bro. And then Hannibal, I think that's the son's name. Poor dumb fool. He thought he had a chance. He thought he had a chance.
He literally took a shot and it literally backfired.
But in saying that, I hate the fact that I feel like towards the end, a lot of it, the council was looking on the depth of Senator Larrick and how Larrick got killed by his captors by Samaj, I think it was who shot him. But yet, even though he was doing it in self-defense and he parried the blast back to him, Mace got somebody killed.
Yeah, but it wasn't a senator, so it's like no reason to care. And then
Exactly.
Another thing is
it
like
was just a person, which is like
it's like people of power versus regular people. That's another thing of like who matters more in this situation. By the way, Handel, another character making a desperate choice in a desperate situation. He's like, our plan has been foiled. I need to do something to make this go through, and he goes for it, and it fails completely. It backfires in his face. Sean, before you give any thoughts on this, I just want to mention one thing. Going back to Senator Larrick's terrible acting, I did notice one thing. The disdain in his voice when he says the word rebels. It makes you realize, had this character survived and made it all the way to like a few movies down the road, we know what side he would have been on. He would have been Team Empire all the way.
I feel like Lyric was just the definition of a figurehead
Mhm.
in this episode. Like all the guards were claiming that he did all of these things, and which honestly was true. I'm not going to put too much thought into it, but like, and going back to his bad acting, like you can definitely tell that he's just trying to put on a face so he doesn't get shot. Be like overly enthusiastic, like, oh my god, I don't know what happened to Kadri. It's so traumatic, but like, it's almost like he just doesn't have it in him to keep it up. Like he has that brief human moment where he just forgets that he's a figurehead. And then even still, when they land at the site and he's, pretending it's such a traumatic experience and has such a heel turn like that, and it's like, oh my god, they did it, like save me. And it's like, come on, you can't. If you're a figurehead, your whole goal is to maintain that figure. Like, how do you just? Which really made me wonder, like, how is he making all this money if he can't stay in character for more than 2 minutes? Like,
Right?
it just made no sense to me. But
That's a very good point. Like, he had no spine.
I don't know. I feel like I've talked about Dooku a lot this episode, and like I think at the site of Katri's death was really where we saw him take like that second step. Like maybe put his toes in the water and be like,
Like when Samaj mentions something that was kind of accurate, he's like, he believes the Jedi are puppets to the powerful. Um, Mace Windu is still in denial, but but obviously the events of what happens at the end of the episode kind of proves him right.
Mhm.
But as Samaj says this, Dooku like stares to the ground to the side, and he's like, he's thinking about what Samaj has to
Mhm.
say, and he kind of realizes that like he might be right,
Yeah.
and that kind of, again, that's kind of shapes the decisions, the choices that all these characters make as their journeys continue. I want to bring up two more things here. Why were the fingernails of the guard's armor so long?
I don't think I noticed that.
I didn't notice that either.
Like
Really?
seriously, if you look at Samaj and Heron's armor, like especially the right glove, but I think the left glove too, the fingernails on the armor were weirdly long.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if that was designed for like climbing purposes that we just never got to see, or some other reason. But it was like it had like fingernail claws that were ridiculously long on it.
Interesting.
That is cool. That is interesting. I did know one thing I did notice is I noticed they weren't as swagged out as the Senator's guards were in episode 1. I mean episode 2 of the series. I mean their outfits were just okay. Yeah, they almost scream like they were the bad guys in this episode, but
Mhm.
yet they were, and yet they technically they were, but then they weren't also. So yeah, there was nothing really too eye popping about theirs as compared to Larry's. I mean to Dagonet's guys.
Yeah, I feel like the line between hero and villain was so blurry in this
Yeah.
episode. Like you could make an argument for almost every character to be right.
I feel like their problem should have been with. Here's the main reason why I think they're the biggest. They're not the biggest villains, but I think they crossed their line with killing Kotri. They
Mhm.
should have done something with what's his name, Lyric, and not killing Kotri. They should have.
Yeah.
I'm not saying kill, even though they end up killing him anyway. They should have. You know what? Why not? They should have focused it all on Lyric instead of Kotri, because Kotri was pretty much the innocent in all this. So
But
Yeah,
here's the thing that kind of justifies their means, and it's like Katri had a spine. Larrick did not. The moment Larrick was alone and unprotected, they could manipulate him like clay. whereas Katri, already a keeper of the peace,
Welcome.
has connections to law enforcement in a sense. Killing Lyric would have done nothing for their
For him.
cause because they wouldn't have had the means to enact the policies they needed to
That's
get
true.
things
That's a good
across.
point.
Again,
You're right about that.
desperate people making desperate choices. In a sense, this was their desperate choice of having to kill a Jedi so that they could manipulate a senator to do things that would help their planet, which is a common theme from the last episode, but in a different execution. All these
Mhm.
characters care about their planet. They want to see their people bettered, and they want to see these politicians stop treating them like chattel that they can just do whatever they want with.
Mhm.
The difference is we kind of got some semblance of change in the in episode
one.
2.
Yeah,
Episode
Mhm.
2, whereas here in episode 3, maybe not so much, or at least we didn't get to see that change play out.
I agree with you with that. And then I think it really set kind of puts emphasis on Dooku's last words to Samaj. Is like I agree. Your ideology is sound. I agree with that. It's your methods of how you went about this,
Mhm.
which was completely wrong. Like you had the right idea. It's just that you weren't about this in a completely wrong way. But don't let your people forget about about why you did this.
And one final note, I want to bring this back to Kiadi Mundi at the funeral. In his eulogy, he said, "She, referring to Katri, was of the Force. It flowed with certainty through her." And I just want to say that the certainty with which Kiadi Mundi constantly speaks, with us knowing how the entire prequel trilogy is about to play out and how things are going to end for him,
Mm-hmm.
it's very annoying that he has always been this guy who is so certain of himself. He like there's never like we're gonna everything this guy says on in canon media is with certainty and almost always factually incorrect, and it's maddening, and it just kind of goes to show the hubris of the Jedi, well, specifically the Jedi Council in a sense. um, the hypocrisy of what Mace Windu said before they boarded the shuttle back to Coruscant, of like, we are guided by our council and not by politics or ego. Bullshit. Look, the ego, whether he or at the very least the hubris of
Mhm.
of various members of the Jedi Council, Kiadi Mundi being one of them, speaking with such certainty, believing that they are always right, and like uh thinking that nothing bad will happen because they have the Force on their side. Uh, like it shows how out of touch that institutions like the Jedi Council and also the Senate had become. Like they've become so disconnected from the people they're supposed to serve and protect.
And I'm so glad you said that because that just reminded me of what I said when we were talking about episode 2, and this will be my last thing. But just how I say, like, how I felt episode 2 really show off the failures of the Senate. I feel like episode 3 compounded on the failures of the Senate, but also show how flawed the Jedi Republic is.
Mhm.
Not the Jedi Republic, the Jedi Council is, and how one-sided they are, and how like limited their view is. Even though they're supposed to be for the people, yeah. I see no reason why these people don't think they're just lapdogs for the Senate.
It it's like the Jedi Council has reached that point that like they've been striving to reach all
Mhm.
this time, and now that they're there, they're like they just stop working.
Mm-hmm.
And Daphne Keene, who's going to be in the Alkalite series, she's been talking about what the show is going to be about, and it's like set 100 years prior to, I think, the beginning of the prequels. And she has been talking about how the Jedi were so full of hubris that the show is going to focus on how the Sith slowly infiltrated the Jedi Order, weaseling their way back into the ways of everything going on in the galaxy. And when we see things like this of the Jedi Council being so certain of themselves, it's kind of not shocking to see how a Sith may have weaseled their way in, or rather, how Palpatine weaseled his way into power over time.
Agree.
But anyway, let's move away from the problems of the Jedi Order and focus on someone who embodies what it means to be a true Jedi. We are talking about Tales of the Jedi, Episode 1, Life and Death. The story about Ahsoka Tano's birth. This was directed by Nathaniel Villanueva and written by Dave Filoni. This was shown as part of Star Wars Celebration Anaheim on a panel in May 28th, 2022, and then released along with the other episodes on Disney Plus on October 26th of this year. Official description: a child goes through a rite of passage with unexpected results. And it takes place on the planet Chile, focusing on Ahsoka's parents, Togruta parents, a man named Nakil, and a woman named Pavti, the latter of which is played by returning Star Wars vet Janina Gavankar, who some of you may remember as Iden Versio from Battlefront 2, the more recent Battlefront 2 video game. Very happy to have her back in this. She is such a wonderful presence to have in Star Wars. She carries that strength with her, both on and off screen. But anyway, basically what happens is Nakil wakes up the entire fucking town to announce his daughter has been born.
He was so happy. I was happy for her.
He was so happy, and you can
I
see
can't blame him.
You can see how tight knit this community is. That none of them are really upset that he just woke him up in the middle of the night to announce the birth of his daughter, and also neither Pavti nor Nakil are weirded out by the fact that the entire town is gathering by their open door and open window to watch their daughter that has just been born, which under any other sort of context might be kind of creepy, but it's like, again, community. It's been a recurring theme of the past couple episodes here, and this one is where community is at its strongest and at its most successful, because if you look at the town, if you look at the village that they're in, everyone, like, the town is thriving. All the colors are bright. Everyone is working together. They're at harmony with nature itself. We have the village chief Gantika, who I don't want to say is kind of like this village's Rafiki, but I'm kind of getting those vibes of, like, she's the shaman. She's
the village
not the witch doctor, but she does practice, like, the mystical traditions with the powders and the creams and the blessings and whatnot. And so a year passes after the birth of Ahsoka. She's grown into a toddler, and we see that Pavti is apparently taking Ahsoka out on a hunt, which I've never seen a baby taken on a hunt before, let alone be strapped to the chest of the hunter while the hunt is taking place. But it's part of a custom, and Star Wars. Star Wars is about diversity, in that all races have their own unique cultures, and I feel like what we saw here with the Togruti people here. Togruti is the name of the village, I believe. It felt like kind of a mixture of Middle Eastern people and indigenous people in maybe earlier North America. In that, like, they all had Middle Eastern accents, but they were kind of practicing traditions that kind of felt like something you would see a Native American do in an old Western film that was maybe had better taste than the way it was written back then, because Lord knows a lot of those old westerns, the way they depicted indigenous people was not very kind to them whatsoever.
Yeah, no.
But you get what I'm trying to say here.
I got you. Yeah.
So anyway, Pavti is a believer of the old ways. From the sound of it, Nakil might not be. He's kind of more of a new school guy, but he's like, all right, I won't bust your balls too much. You believe what you believe, and I'll leave it at that. Which is fine. There's still definitely love there between the two, especially with the baby connecting them to each other. Just goes to show that love finds itself in all different shapes and sizes.
Great.
I didn't know I needed a pause, and I didn't know where to pause.
No, that's true. I do. I like the two of them, Popsy and Nikhil. Like you said, Nikhil. Maybe it's the Game of Thrones in me, and seeing like how the old gods and the new. It made me think of that between the two of them, and how one definitely worships the old ways, and Nikhil, he's more like, okay, let's get off from new stuff. The new hotness is the seven. That's who we need to be going with.
Sean, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was nice this episode not seeing a whole lot of extremities
Mm-hmm.
in the fact that like it's just two people who think differently, but like it doesn't really affect their way of life. It's not their entire personality. It's not something that like they try and encroach onto others. It's just that's what they think.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that made for a nice change of pace.
Yeah, and the true respect here is that like Pavti is like, don't disrespect the spirits, the trees, the ancestors, and Akila's like, okay, I'll back off.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's it.
they've been together long enough that I think they know each other's limits. And
Mhm.
he's like, happy hunting to my special ladies, and Gantiga gives them a blessing. Gantiga is feeding what's called tukas. I originally thought those were a different kind of dog. They might be, but the correct term is tukas. That's what she was feeding.
I love those things.
Yeah, they
Anyway,
look like panda and loaf cats almost to me.
little bit. She paints blue specks on both Ahsoka and Pavti's foreheads as while uttering a blessing, and mother and daughter go off on the hunt. As they're walking through the forest, Ahsoka sees a squirrel, which is also the first canonical appearance and the first official appearance overall of a squirrel in Star Wars, which is kind of cool. Again, like the little bits of the galaxy, like it makes sense that some of the stuff that we'd see here on our planet Earth would make its way in some shape or form
Oh yeah.
into this. Like also screws and bricks. Looking at a certain Star Wars YouTuber who thinks that for some reason screws and bricks make something not Star Wars.
Really?
I will explain off air. I don't want to give that guy too much airtime.
Okay.
Anyway, so anyway, Pavti is basically like, Ahsoka, look, everywhere there is life. Value it, honor it. And Ahsoka's just taking it all in. Pavti pops like these weird plants that have dandelions growing out of them, and they start just like gushing and flying all over the place. And she's just like, I think she sneezes at one point, which was adorable. But she's just like taking all of this in, and then Pavti's fingers just cover Ahsoka's little tiny mouth, and she's like, shh. And she sees some kai bucks. That's what they're called, kai bucks, grazing, just eating in the fields, chomping on the grass. And Pavti gets a rifle out, fires at will, and I don't know if Gantika heard the gunshot or if she just felt that an animal had been wounded. Because again, this village and its connection with nature is so strong. Like this village truly embodies the light side of the Force in that it is truly connected to everything around it. But she knows an animal has been wounded. I'm not sure whether she heard it or she just felt it in her soul. But she knows what happened, and she says a little prayer. And Pavti, with Ahsoka still strapped to her, walks over to the Kaibuck, wounded, breathing heavily, and Ahsoka's like, she's squirming. She doesn't like this. She's like, to go from that moment of innocence, pure innocence, where she's just enjoying the dandelions, and then to have to deal with looking at what her mom just shot, wounded, and is about to stab and fully kill. It's a lot for her to take in. Like, she can sense the Kaibuck is dying and doesn't want to face it, and then Pavti literally forces her face to look at it, and is like, "You must face death. Do not fear it." And then Ahsoka faces it, and then her very young brain goes through a 5-second roller coaster of like, what am I looking at here? I'm looking at an animal that's about to die right in front of me and is dying right in front of me. And then her mom just stabs it, putting it out of its misery. Her mom did say a prayer right before stabbing it, so at least it's like a respect thing of like, thank you for all the mouths you will feed with your sacrifice, in a sense. And yeah, Gantika definitely sensed that. And yeah, it didn't take long for Ahsoka to get on board with Pavti's hunting, because the moment Pavti asked, like, he is a heavy one, he will feed many, think we can lift it? She just starts clapping, like, yay, yay! It's like, what a 180 for a child to go through.
Yeah, I feel like it would. I know what you mean. You were making it sound so bad though. Like she just forced a child to watch her shoot this animal and stab her. Like I understand what you were saying like that. Like, oh, I was laughing like, oh my god, that sounds so brutal. But at the same time, I do like how Janina was like, she was making it. She was sounding very soft to Ahsoka while she was walking her through. It's like listen, you can't shy away. Death is a natural part of life, and think about the blessings that this Kaibuck is going to give to the family. You have to, you must embrace this. You can't be afraid of death. I do like how she was very much. Well, I'm not sure. Actually, I know I probably wouldn't do the same. I do appreciate how she was at least somewhat soothing her way through all this, to the point where, like you said, once she put Ahsoka down, she was back to her regular happy self.
I think it was funny how in 5 seconds of this episode, Ahsoka lost her innocence, and I don't think we saw that from Qui-Gon in episode 2. Like, Ahsoka might have less innocence than him at that point. I don't know. I thought that was fun. I think a lot of this episode for me was just a fun origin story of Ahsoka with some light spiritual themes behind it. And I do think that they did a really good job of making Ahsoka so expressive, and not just in the sense of like a baby showing emotions, but like a baby who's connected to the Force. And
go ahead.
I was gonna ramble a little bit, so that's all you.
I was gonna say that I kind of have interpreted this scene as like, this is like the Mufasa teaching Simba about the circle of life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And it's with a more direct approach of like, here's the death part of the circle of life, but like she is like the title is Life and Death. That's really the title of this episode. And I like Ahsoka is, when you're a baby, you are probably at your most innocent because you don't really understand what hatred is or anything or what evil is. You just like, you just feel what's happening around you and going with it. And you're also at your most impressionable at that youthful age, and so her mom just basically told her, "Don't be afraid. Death is a natural part of life. It comes for us all at some point, and it's just it's better if you learn to accept it now, so it will make you better in the future, than to not accept it and be afraid of dying at every waking moment," which was kind of, now that I think about it, it was one of the biggest drawbacks of Anakin, of her master.
I was think,
He was so afraid of losing everyone around him that he literally chased everyone away from him by with the method of choice he used to try and save everyone. Like,
get out of my head, Nico. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing at this point. Like, wow, that's amazing way they did this. Filoni's a genius to me. This is incredible.
he is always thinking. He is always thinking. So anyway, one thing before the tiger showed up, Pavti said one more thing that's really stuck out to me, especially considering it's apparently hunting season in Pennsylvania, and I work at a beer distributor where tons of hunters are coming in and out gathering beer for their camping trips, talking about how many bucks they've killed or how many bucks they've seen. And Pavti said, "We never take more than we need." Again, that goes back to how close and tight knit and connected this community, this village is with nature itself. Pavti does not want to disrupt the ecosystem or the balance of nature. Killing too many Kai bucks would throw everything out of balance. They're only taking one for what they need, which is a lot of food to feed this village, to feed many mouths, and they don't want to kill any more than they have to. And this is kind of noticeable. Also, there's no ego with Pavti. There's like we've seen a lot of dick swinging in the previous two episodes here.
True.
But with Pavti, she is calm. She is cool. She is not thinking too highly of herself to the point that it comes to the detriment of everyone around her. Especially when the Sabretooth approached, because she quickly realizes that her rifle is out of reach. So she lets out a primal scream to throw which was kind of funny, but also smart. It was smart.
Very smart.
It threw the Sabretooth off guard and gave her the opening she needed to grab the rifle. And then she never really fires willy-nilly. She's using it as an offensive blunt object weapon, and also a defensive weapon as well. And it's not until she realizes that, like, oh shit, my daughter's about to become food, that she finally takes her first shot, because there's enough distance. She destroys this poor Sabretooth's leg. Like, there are noticeable scarring marks. Fur has been burned off, flesh is exposed, nasty gashes on the leg, and also, again, to get back to the connectivity of the community, how tight knit it is. The entire village comes to Pavti and Ahsoka's safety. They all band together to fight the tiger, and unfortunately, that was when the Sabretooth saw the moment to grab Ahsoka and was like, "Well, I'm getting out of here." Lifts up kid in mouth and runs off, and Pavti is heartbroken. The village is heartbroken for her. Gantika says a blessing to the woods. And interestingly enough, I think the lesson that Pavti tried to teach Ahsoka worked, because Ahsoka is not afraid once the entire time she's with this tiger. The entire time the Sabretooth is here. Like, the Sabretooth is growling, and she's just no-selling it, to use a wrestling term. She is just taking it all in. She's like, "Hi, big cat," and goes for the How to Train Your Dragon nose touch.
I knew you were like that.
and establishes a connection with this supposed beast. And I think this kind of explains why in Rebels she has such a close connection with Ezra, because Ezra also had a very close connection through the Force with animals and wildlife. So this is the earliest sign of her. Like this is when the Force awakened for her. She had an open heart, an open mind, and she's like, this beast wants to eat me, but I don't want to hurt it. I want to make friends with it. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to show him I mean no harm and that we can all work together in harmony and whatnot. And it's we don't even know if she's potty trained yet, and yet she is able to do this. And it's at this point that getting back to I think rule number one of this podcast, bringing it back around to something people might dislike and trying to see things from a different point of view. Ray, it's like a lot of people have had a lot of issues with Ray because they don't think she earned the ability to use the Force. They don't think she earned the ability to even use a bow staff. And it doesn't make sense to them, with or without the familial ties, how she became so powerful in the Force so quickly. And the fact of the matter is, Ahsoka tamed a fucking tiger at the age of 1 without any formal training whatsoever. This is a franchise where essentially embodiment of God is an active character in the way things play out. So that's one thing. God, the Force, chooses not only who gets to have the Force, but when they have their awakenings and how. We're not going to really talk about this as part of the podcast, but there is an audiobook. I think it's called Master and Apprentice that I've been trying to get through. And it kind of focuses on Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And in it, there's a bit of dialogue where Qui-Gon is monologuing in his head about how he's a little upset that Obi-Wan hasn't mastered battle meditation yet, whereas that's something Qui-Gon picked up instantly. But then he tells himself, every student picks different things up at different paces. And he has to be mindful of that and be respectful of that and just let Obi-Wan grow at the rate he himself can and will and needs to grow. And so this was Ahsoka's awakening. Rey's awakening was different and at a different time in her life than it played out for Ahsoka. But all Force sensitive people are going to have their own unique awakening at their own unique times in their own unique ways, and that has to be respected. This happened to come at a time when Ahsoka had just been given this life lesson by her mother, where she had opened herself up to the circle of life, the spiritual connectivity of her environment around her, of the light side of the Force, and she let it all in, and it came back out in this moment where she bonded with the tiger. And in that moment where, like, also, as I said before, as a baby, you're at your most innocent. So Ahsoka has no hatred in her heart. She has no doubts in her mind. She is just feeling things and trying things out as they go along, because she doesn't really know that much yet. She can only act on feelings, not on thoughts. And she's feeling that she wants to make peace with this tiger, and it works out that way. She just felt it, and it happened. What does Qui-Gon say? Think. I mean, Qui-Gon says feel, don't think. That's what he tells Anakin during the pod race. And that's how it played out for him as well. So it is, again, it's another thing connecting the past to the future, but also it's one of those life lessons. Like, sometimes it's just easier to go with the flow than it is to overthink everything. I say this as an autistic person who overthinks literally every decision I've ever made in my entire life, this podcast included. But any thoughts on that, guys, before we close things up?
Okay. Yeah, I thought this was a very I'll say sweet, because and kind of like how you were saying, like with the fact that she's completely innocent about this, and in the scenario, and she doesn't see the tiger as a threat to me. And while we know, the three of us and everybody else watching know that this tiger could literally snack her in one gulp. I think this, again, like you said, is what's so important about that first about the previous 5 minutes, like with the Kai book and stuff. She sees this as another part of the planet, and another part basically kind of an extension of herself. This is just another creature that's living on this land the same way I am, and the same way as my mother is. And while again, she's just 1 years old, and might not quite not understand that, but I think in that innocence, she just has no fear with this tiger, which is what allows her to connect with the tiger like that, and which how she rolls into town later like a boss with the tiger. And I just think I like everything that happened with Ahsoka. With I'm gonna call her Baby Ahsoka in this moment, and I think it's great. And as far as the awakenings of the Force in people, I never paid much attention to those people when they were talking about Rey like that, because those same people that had a problem with Rey with having her powers like that were the same people that kind of just blew up the fact that in The Last Jedi, a little kid just force pulled a broom over to him. Like, yeah, y'all can't say nothing to me.
Yeah, I thought this episode was great. I loved I'm always a sucker for a good origin story, and seeing quite literally Ahsoka's origin on top of like just seeing so much character of her that you see in like the Clone Wars, where she has that innocence about her, but is also like very adventurous, very willing to try things out. I think it was cool to see that in such a short time frame, and how she befriended. I referred to the tiger as Murder Cat the entire time I was watching. And so seeing her just like befriend Murder Cat like that and like work the Force on it, I was like, this is a cool moment. And like, and you got to think how many other Star Wars characters have this type of Force awakening in them that's like such a moment of innocence. Like it reminded me of like the Senator's son and Qui-Gon thinking like this is the way things should be. And like if Ahsoka could say anything besides a little every now and then, I'm sure that's what she'd be saying.
To piggyback off what you said about the rolling in on the tiger like a badass, she did not use the Force to manipulate the tiger. She used the Force to bond with the tiger.
Yeah,
Again,
that's what I'm saying. She was just completely at one with the tiger.
something that separates again the dark side from the light side. The dark side manipulates. The light side just goes with it. It doesn't try to bend anything to its will. And she established that connection with the tiger, and then in turn established a connection between the tiger and the rest of her community, because the tiger literally bows to her mother to be like, I trust this young one on my back enough that I will also trust you to not do anything nefarious or short-handed when once I give her back to you. And and she takes Ahsoka from the tiger's back, and then she thanks him, and the tiger strolls off. Hopefully those wounds heal, because I feel bad for the tiger having those wounds in its leg. I don't know if they'll get infected or anything. I mean, the blaster fire probably cauterized the wound, but it's still probably very irritating. So, and then we finish off with Gantika basically explaining to Pavti what happened, and it's Jedi. Ahsoka is Jedi. Not she is a member of the Jedi Order. Not that she is Force sensitive, but that she is Jedi. She embodies what the Jedi are supposed to be. Which, again, we've been talking about the differences between Dooku and Qui-Gon and Mace Windu. And it's like what it means to be a Jedi versus what it means to be part of the Order. And Ahsoka truly embodies what it means to be a Jedi. She is, and you know, we'll see her journey and how it plays out, and she eventually becomes disillusioned with the ways of the Order as well. But she never forgets what it means to be a Jedi. The further along we follow her in her journey, like even with the lightsabers, she goes from that journey of green to blue to pure white. She is just purely one with the light side of the Force, symbolically in terms of that. And this, excuse me, this is where we see her at her earliest connection with the light side. She's always been in tune with it. She's always and we'll see further along on her journey. As the older she gets, the more mature she gets, the more she's able to put whatever ego she has behind her, checking it at the door, and constantly learning and growing. Things that Anakin, her master, maybe could not do, which again is like the next generation making up for the mistakes of the old. Um, and it'll be interesting to watch and rewatch her journey because she's got that series coming out, and
Mhm.
That's true.
I think next year. I can't remember what month. I think February, but I'm not. That might be too early. I'm not sure. I can't remember what month they said that her show was set to release. Um, but I'm excited for it. She is definitely my favorite character in all of Star Wars, and again, it helps that I literally grew up with her. She was essentially the new kid on the block who got to be part of Star Wars. She was living out the dreams of every single viewer her age. But again, that's for when we get to the Clone Wars and onward. But this was a real nice way to see her story begin, and I'm excited for it. This was the first episode of this podcast, and there are obviously a lot of kinks to work out, and I'm gonna figure them out as the host. Again, I knew this was gonna be like a trial run to see what works and what doesn't. Obviously, reading through the entire plots of the thing according to Wikipedia is not a good idea for time, and also for my throat. So we'll change things up a little bit because, especially considering next week, we are going to be discussing the Phantom Menace. That is next in the order of things. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, one of my personal favorite Star Wars movies because it has the greatest lightsaber battle of all time, and also it brought in space NASCAR, which is kind of funny. I'm not really a racing fan. I am a Mario Kart fan, and it's just kind of like, oh, Star Wars brought in race car driving. This is fun. I'm all along for the ride. And with all these talks of culture, it'll definitely it'll definitely reshape some conversations about the community of the Gungans and things of that nature. Zad, don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm not. Stiff upper lip.
Be respectful. Be respectful. Anyway, let's get into plugs. Zad, do you have anything going on? And if so, where can the people find you?
Well, nothing really. Nothing really in the immediate future, but you can always find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Zadia Smith. That's ZA2Ds Smith. And also, I have been posting a little more on my YouTube channel. Just find me at the real ZAD. I'll change my name in a little bit to it. But lately, I'm trying something. I'm posting a playthrough of the video game The Quarry. So I'm currently in chapter 8. So just watching my playthrough of that. Like it'll be just the game, but you'll hear my voice. But that's pretty much all I'm up to. But I do trivia on most on Facebook through like MTC multiplayers and things like that. So go check them out.
Sean, my cousin, where can people find you? What does your band have going on?
Well, band is having a quiet winter. Like we talked about in the beginning, we're called the Book Club. You can follow us on all social media platforms at the Book Club PGH. We have, for anyone who lives in Western Pennsylvania or East Ohio, we have a show in Greensburg at, let me get the location here. It is at Green Beacon Art Gallery on December 9th. And then the following night, we were playing with the same exact bands in Youngstown, Ohio at Westside Bowl. So I'm really looking forward to kind of a 2-night tour there that we're doing. So if you're in the area, check us out.
You can find me social media wise on Twitter at Nico Furioso, as seen down here, as well as twitch.tv/Nicholas Starhart. YouTube also says Nicholas Starhart. I'm going to change the username for that at some point. And in terms of the media for this podcast, if you're watching on YouTube right now, you can check the video description, and there'll be links to the Twitch page for this, the Twitter handle, and also the Facebook group. So you can check. Reconnect Force is the Twitter handle, I believe. Reconnecting with the Force, twitch.tv/reconnecting with the Force. And yeah, I check the video description on YouTube, please, because I'm kind of forgetting it all right now. It's been a very long night. In terms of professional wrestling, I myself am not going to be wrestling for a little bit just because of the fact that I've been dealing with pains and or illnesses that have just been keeping me on the shelf. But I do still want to support the Pittsburgh wrestling scene. So please, this Saturday, December 3rd, at T2T Pittsburgh, that's Technique to Train Pittsburgh. This is a poster made by one of the students wrestling on the show. He was like, send me all your baby pictures and I'll just like put them in this poster. Anyway, we got debuts of several of MV Young students who are going to be competing on this show this Saturday, December 3rd, 880 Fifth Avenue, New Kensington is the address. $10 entry fee. Please check it out. Then the following week, December 10th, Uniontown Mall, first from 2 to 5 p.m. Women of Honor former champion Sumi Sakai, the first and longest reigning champion to hold that title. She'll be doing a seminar for Rise Wrestling. And then later that night, Rise Wrestling will be having its 6th anniversary show. Go check it out. PB Smooth defending the Rise Grand Championship against Edric Everhart. Plus, Sumi Sakai will be in mixed tag team action. She'll be teaming with AJ Alexander to take on Laura Lovelace and Christian Noir. And then December 17th at Mr. Small's Theater in Millville, Pennsylvania, we got the Enjoy Wrestling Odyssey Battle Royal. MV Young won the last one to become the inaugural Enjoy Wrestling champion. I think he'll be defending this title in a singles match this time against Lufisto, who was recently inducted into the GCW Hall of Fame this past year. So that should be a good match. Rumble rules. It's going to be a fun time. So again, come check out all of the Pittsburgh wrestling scene. I may be wrestling on one of these shows, but more so likely not. I need to get my health in order, and then hopefully I'll be back in the new year. I didn't come up with an outro. It's been a very long night. Again, this podcast, it's a new endeavor. I'm still working out the kinks. Thought I had everything taken care of. Apparently, I still have some more kinks to work out, but I promise you, we're going to get our shit together, and we're going to create a podcast that will change the Star Wars conversation for the better. I hope we did that today. I hope we gave you some positive things to think about, and made you see some things in a new light. We really hammered the themes. I'm rambling at this point. So may the Force be with you again, always. Bye.